What is a piece of media that you hold dear to you? It can be anything really, just think of one. Now, I'm not sure I'll be able to guess it, though I can imagine it could be something like a song or an album, a movie or a TV show, a sport or game, or even a hobby or career.
Coming to bed, honey?
Yes, dear.
Now let me ask you this. What about it is special to you? Or rather, why does it matter to you? Again, I can't guess the answer to those questions for everyone, though I can get the gist. Now that you've told me what your favorite pieces of media are, allow me to talk about what makes mine so special to me. The two that I wanted to refer to for this discussion are none other than the Super Mario series by Nintendo and a movie by Kyoto Animation, Naoko Yamada's A Silent Voice. To me, these two things are some of the most treasured works of art that I could have come across in my life. They hold a special place in my heart and mind, and they've played a massive role in shaping me into the person I am now. So what about these two different things make them my favorite? Mario! We all know the guy. Hell, he's even more popular than Mickey Mouse in some cases. Few characters like him and his brother Luigi can evoke such joy as the mustache marvels themselves. His rich and entertaining catalog of media spanning decades really goes to show how much of a treasure he is for many worldwide. Everywhere you go, there's a good chance you'll see Mario and his friends, whether it's something wearing merchandise, advertisements in stores, or people playing games on their Nintendo devices. Recently, the success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, produced by Universal's Illumination Studios, has propelled Mario's popularity even further, cruising Nintendo to the ranks of other well-established films, peaking at the 15th highest-growing movie ever and the highest-growing animated film of 2023. It's honestly kind of funny to me, as Nintendo was fighting to keep their brand relevant not too long ago, compared to now, where I've noticed more Mario merchandise from the movie than merchandise from the games in recent memory. Even after 40 years, anytime there's a party, someone will have a Nintendo Switch ready with Mario Kart or Mario Party, guaranteed to spark a time full of fun and laughter. Essentially, Mario is considered by many to be not just the face of gaming, but also the face of fun for people from all walks of life. And while I can sing his praises about his cultural impact on the world, it doesn't answer the question of why and how this series has had such an impact on me. I remember first knowing what Mario was for the first time when I was in daycare. Every day before and after school, there was a period when my family friend would host me and my brother alongside a few other children from the same school. Everyone had a DS, whether they came from a good background or not. Everyone had their batch of games, and everyone had their colors and stickers they would put on them. And it was a whole community of kids playing together. And one day, I remember getting the chance to try this strange new world of gaming for myself. The game that I remember playing was a little game called Mario Kart DS, and it was love at first sight.
Here we go!
Like a light bulb, something switched inside me. I had seen the light, and I couldn't turn away. Mario's presence has since been a constant in my life, and I can hardly remember a time when he wasn't there. Any game that came out, I knew about it. And it's been this way ever since that magical day. Mario has been a source of comfort for me during tough times, serving as a warm, familiar blanket for my heart and mind. I don't even have to play any of the games. Listening to music, watching other people talk about Mario, and really any fan content surrounding him makes my day a good one. To put it simply, it's tough not to have a smile on my face with Mario. Each aspect of the games, whether classic or modern, radiates a charm and joy in a way that is uniquely captivating for me. And it's truly one of my favorite pastimes seeing this little plumber from Brooklyn run and jump around without a care other than to save the day and get some cake out of it. Something about one game in particular has always stood out to me throughout my life. I doubt that any one experience could trump this one for me. Super Mario Galaxy is not just my favorite Mario game, though it is quite possibly my favorite game ever. From its artistic direction to the gameplay, the story, and oh my goodness, don't even get me started on the music. To me, it's kind of like a favorite Beatles song. Everyone and anyone has one. If there's a Mario game for every person on the planet, then this would be my Mario game. The story begins with Princess Peach inviting Mario to celebrate the Star Festival, where a comet that passes by every 100 years is observed and celebrated, for its powers bring much of the Mushroom Kingdom's energy. Bowser has other plans, however, ambushing the kingdom and lifting the castle out from under the ground with the help of his airships and some UFOs, taking Peach with him. Before Mario can do anything, he's struck by the magic powers of Kamek and sent spiraling into the cosmos. Awoken by a strange, small star creature, Mario realizes he isn't anywhere familiar, alone in the vast horizons of space. Rosalina, a mysterious cosmic guardian of the star people called Lumas, appears to Mario and tells him that he's the only one that can save the universe and Peach from becoming Bowser's personal belongings. To get the fire-breathing brute and save the day once again, he must collect all the power stars that Bowser scattered across the universe and repair the damage to the Comet Observatory. This game was insane when it came out, a first of its kind. With the gravity system for traveling to different planets alongside the first orchestral soundtrack in the Mario series, this game became a favorite among Nintendo fans. For me, however, it changed me like no other game had before or after it. Its creativity and charm just oozing out of the box it came in. The platforming segments of this game are simply Mario and Nintendo masterclass examples of how to perfect feeling with the worlds and gameplay. I used to think that using the Wii Remote and Nunchuck was okay at very best, but this game made me love it to pieces, to the point where I don't think I could play this game any other way. Any other control scheme would feel all wrong to me. Galaxy simply has the Cinderella effect on me, where everything tech and gameplay-wise was my perfect fit. Everything was fluid, responsive, and magical all the same. It's one thing to have a great game with a great feel to it, though however, it's even better when it has good music to follow, and Mario doesn't pull any sleepers here. Super Mario Galaxy's orchestrated soundtrack was and is one of the best decisions made by music composer Mahito Yokota, alongside the guidance of legendary composer Koji Kondo. Together, the two create some of the series' greatest tracks to bless the franchise. Fan favorites like Gusty Garden Galaxy, Good Egg Galaxy, or even Space Junk Galaxy are all some of Mario's greatest hits, and that's not even breaking the surface. Even the goddamn menu screen is majestic and hits the theme of the vast reaches of outer space right on the nail. I just adore how much care and effort was put into a soundtrack that was originally going to be more Latin-based, aiming for the more digital sounds of familiar Mario tunes as opposed to a full orchestra. Which, I'm not even joking, this is a real thing that could have happened. In an Iwata asks, Yokota states, the essence of Mario was something I really thought about a lot when I knew that I would be in charge of the composition of music for this game. And the conclusion I hit upon was Latin music. All of these tunes have been rattling around in my head for years, and I'm not even sure if they'll ever leave, especially now with Nintendo's music app only giving me more direct access to the songs that made me fall in love with this game's music all over again. But what's a good game without some story to it? Mario has never been a go-to series when it comes to their stories. While the RPGs exist, and the movie tells a pretty solid origin story for the Mario Brothers, few of the mainline Mario games focus on cold-cut stories aside from the princess needing saving. With Mario Galaxy, however, director Yoshiaki Koizumi worked late nights and secretly slipped through the cracks of Nintendo's watchful eyes to write and implement one of the plumber's greatest stories. During your cosmic adventure, there's a storybook that Rosalina will read to the other Lumas, with more chapters being unlocked throughout your playthrough. I remember coming across this for the time, and after reading through everything, it was here where the game came together for me. This single little side story is what cemented Mario Galaxy's place as my favorite game ever. This story, while not confirmed, tells the hypothetical of how Rosalina became the mother of the Lumas. It begins with a young girl meeting a young Luma after a spaceship comes crashing down on a planet similar to Earth. The Luma cried to the girl asking where her mother was. Feeling sorry for the lost star child, the girl helps promise the Luma to find his mother, supposedly traveling on another comet. During the night, the girl and the star would look for the comet. Though to no avail after years of waiting, she helped the star child fix his spaceship as they went looking for his mother themselves. After a lot of searching and exploration, the two found a comet to settle down on to wait a while for the Luma's lost mother. One night, after they began to build more and more buildings on the comet, the girl had a dream about her mother and became homesick. Seeing the girl cry made the Luma empathetic, as they promised to instead take care of each other, realizing neither of them would see their parents again. After hundreds of comets passed them by and many more Lumas had joined the girl in the lost Luma, the girl wondered about her planet, curious to see how her family had been doing since she left. As she pointed her father's telescope to her home planet, the girl was reminded of the time she had spent on the planet with her family, how she would go stargazing with her father, how she and her brother would make snowmen in the winter, and how she and her mother would have a picnic in the summertime. The girl collapsed to the floor, shouting, "I want to go home! I want to go home right now!" The Lumas didn't know what to do, as the girl kept shouting, "I want to go home! I want to go back to my house on the hill! I want to see my mother, but I know she's not there! I knew all along she wasn't out there in the sky, because she's sleeping under the tree on the hill!" A hush fell over the Lumas as silence filled the air. The lost Luma, who had accompanied her the whole way, confronted her, hoping to cheer the girl up, saying her mother would always be nearby, as she had become a part of her. He suddenly had an idea. The Luma shot out into the stars in a big burst of blue and white light, reborn as a comet. The girl was in shock, as she wondered how this was all possible. The Star Children explained to her that their purpose is to one day turn into planets or comets, and eventually they turn into stardust that then turn into new Lumas. This newly formed comet speeds into the cosmos, now trailing with a bright blue light heading toward the girl's planet. One night after the birth of a new Luma, the girl dreamt of a soft and comforting light. The girl dreams of what it would be like to sleep under her favorite sleeping place on her home planet again. Since then, the same comet has passed by that blue planet every 100 years. As the page turns, players are shown the telescope her father had, sitting in a field with the night sky painted with shooting stars, as the end is shown across the center of the screen. For everything this game has shown you, from its wonderful and fun-filled challenges to its gorgeous orchestral soundtrack, nothing compares to the weight this story holds on me. It's a touching and beautiful story, with the theme of family and connection being one of the most resonating themes within the story. Something that most likely would have never made it in had Nintendo caught wind of it early on. Koizumi is, if not one of Nintendo's best aces in their lineup of astounding game developers, with some of his best work contributing to some of the best games to come out of the Mario series to this day. Film is a very distinct medium compared to games, yet it can evoke similar and/or the same sentiments in individuals. Each forms its own culture. We quote them, discuss them, analyze them, and cultivate feelings of love or disdain towards movies. The culture surrounding film fosters connections among people who share a common interest, resonating especially with those who appreciate the sense of communal experience. Different genres of film have the power to attract different audiences, giving rise to new subcultures and inspiring further creativity that contributes to cinema within those categories. Unfortunately, animated films often receive less recognition from the general public and often face unfortunate stigma, frequently dismissed as mere children's entertainment, cost-effective productions, or difficult to enjoy, and often receive less recognition from the broader public compared to their live-action counterparts. However, I would argue, have you ever watched a good Disney or DreamWorks movie? Even if a specific film may not resonate well, you can't overlook the immense effort that goes into creating animated movies, which can be even more demanding than live-action films in some cases. Whether it's 2D or 3D animation, the people who work until the very end of production are some of the most talented people in the industry. Stop motion, for example, is one of the hardest forms of animation to work with, and yet it always looks stellar in my opinion. The complexity involved in animation is astonishing, relying on countless moving parts within computer animation in particular that can oftentimes only be replicated in real life. The result is a collaborative endeavor involving hundreds, if not thousands of people and ideas working together to produce a film in this medium. That being said, few have hit me in a way that I can't honestly explain well. Whether they are beyond excellent in terms of script, score, or cinematography, few are as good as this one. Among the myriad of animated films, few have left a lasting impact on me like that of a silent voice. Directed by Naoko Yamada and based on the manga by Yoshitoki Oima, the story follows Shoya Ishida, a boy living out his childhood without a care in the world. He's kind of your average boy, has a few friends, and makes the most of whatever chance he has to make life fun and exciting. However, this carefree youth of his suddenly comes to a halt when a new classmate, a girl by the name of Shoko Nishimiya, tries to fit in with his friends, despite being deaf. Ishida's stubborn thrive of entertainment soon leads him down a path of bullying Nishimiya, as she is socially ostracized amongst her classmates. It gets to the point where the principal has to intervene, with a total of 8 hearing aids being lost or damaged within the 5 months of Nishimiya's enrollment in the school. When no one fesses up to the crime, the finger is pointed at Ishida, despite the whole class taking part in bullying Nishimiya. She eventually transferred schools due to this harassment, with Ishida taking all the blame for his actions alongside Nishimiya's notebook after a physical altercation. Years later, Ishida still grapples and carries the feelings of guilt and isolation, and is driven down to the point of suicide, mainly after word got out in the years following of how he would bully Nishimiya. After his friends cut him off, Ishida had trouble looking people in the eye, with purple X's marked over secondary and background characters' faces, visualizing this anxiety. Ishida begins selling his things, quits his job, and withdraws the money from his bank account as he plans to end his life. Before he does so, however, he seeks out Nishimiya and attempts to reconnect with her. After finding her by way of coincidence, the two begin to form a healing friendship that helps both Nishimiya and Ishida confront their struggles and repair past mistakes, as well as some past friendships, and make new ones along the way. Ishida promises his mother he wouldn't kill himself and promises himself to look other people in the face. At first, Nishimiya's sister Yuzuru was hesitant about Ishida's sudden appearance and motivations to want to see Nishimiya. It's not every day your childhood bully suddenly turns a new page and wants to throw bread into the river to the fish and catch up after all these years of nothing. So you don't exactly blame Yuzuru's position when it comes to being defensive over Nishimiya. When the two have a rather nasty fight with each other, however, it's Ishida who arrives and invites Yuzuru over to his place. It's strange to Yuzuru, as she was the one responsible for getting him suspended after photos spread around of him jumping into the river illegally to retrieve the notebook that he wanted to give back to Nishimiya. And yet here he was inviting her over to dinner. Ishida then opens up about being alone and how he knows how bad the things he did to her sister was. He just wanted to make amends and hope to become closer with Nishimiya in a better light. Yuzuru realizes that she might have made some incorrect assumptions about Ishida after all. As Nishimiya and Ishida continue their growing bond, he helps her reconnect with one of the only students that didn't bully Nishimiya and actively wanted to learn sign language, that being Miyoko Sahara. She also happens to go to the same school as Naoka Ueno, who bullied Nishimiya and hung around Ishida as a kid. Nishimiya also reconnects with Miki Kawai, who also went to the same school with Ishida, now in a relationship with a guy named Satoshi Mashiba. Throughout the rest of the movie, everyone's relationship rises and falls, and eventually rises once again as they all overcome their past with each other. This movie is one of, if not my favorite movie ever. Everything from its score, animation, and writing is one of the most impactful combinations of visual media that I could ever describe. Every person and company involved with the production of this movie was some of the best talent to come out of a single production such as this. Kyoto Animation was simply the best studio to choose to produce this movie. Their attention to detail and character movements and environments is simply among the best in the animation industry. They turned an already great manga into one of the best looking anime to watch, with nothing but heart and soul being put into every frame of animation. Not only was the animation a high point, but the music and overall sound design elevated the narrative to a whole new level. The topic of hearing impairment is handled with utmost care, as many times throughout the film, the instrumentation of the score will sometimes fade in and out, muffled or disorientating. Other times, the very wood being moved on the piano would be the main focus alongside the music being played. This was done so that people with hearing impairments like Nishimiya could feel the music's vibration. The sheer craftsmanship and genius that comes within the soundtrack of this film cannot be understated by any sense of the word, as it does away with any conventional movie soundtracks with large orchestral ensembles and instead uses more intimate sounding pianos and other wood-based instruments, even using the atmosphere around the microphones recording the instruments. It swells in the right places and fizzles in moments of calm. Ushio just knew exactly what to do with the score and ran with it. Even in areas where the soundtrack is more conventional for a movie, the only reason I believe this works is because the viewer is used to these unusual sounds and arrangements for the majority of this movie. So hearing more typical instruments used within movie scores invokes a sense of tension that isn't found anywhere else aside from two really important scenes. It's downright mind-blowing to me how all of this was put together, and certainly will remain one of my favorite soundtracks, even for how simple it may be to an average listener. Lastly, the writing of A Silent Voice does wonders for bringing to light the oftentimes real and unfortunate parts of being a kid in a modern-day society. Bullying is something that will unfortunately stick around so long as there is hatred held in those and taught to future generations. For someone like Nishimiya, being deaf was like being kicked in the shin every day at the hands of Ishida and his friends. And the way that the film plays out her time in elementary school is honestly one of the most real and grounded interpretations of what being a kid who's being bullied is really like. It's a very mature and believable narrative, especially how Ishida is portrayed throughout the film. If there is one major strength I have to point out, it's the way the writers make sure that you do not end up liking Ishida. Because in all honesty, he's not a very likable character in the beginning. After all, who would root for a bully who picks on a student with a disability? However, once the audience is given his inner monologue and is given some insight into his thoughts and feelings, he slowly becomes the best written character I've ever had the pleasure of watching. The way he moves, the way he talks, and everything about his character evolution in both childhood and adulthood are some of the most genuine expressions of ignorance, anxiety, guilt, and any other emotion felt throughout the movie. By the end of it, you're also crying alongside him because we, the audience, also get to feel the weight of his growth. Being able to apologize for his past actions, make amends, and truly be able to look people in the face after years of staring at the floor. You feel that as the final scene shows all the X's falling to the floor. You feel the weight that is finally lifted after all this time spent with this character. I love Ishida as a character. His flaws, his strengths, and his evolution are some of the best written developments throughout a story that I've had the pleasure of watching unfold. I would be lying to myself if I didn't say the same for Nishimiya, as her development is also one of the best and well-deserved endings I could have ever wanted in a character. Overall, A Silent Voice is a powerful movie, and yet it has the grace to deliver that stab to your heart in the most beautiful way possible. Through all of these factors, it has managed to not only grow on me as one of my favorite movies ever, but has also become an expression of who I am as a person through its messaging of self-growth, self-love, acceptance, and realization. I've sung the praises of these two art pieces for a while now, and as the title implies, this is not a happy video. I wish life could always be happy for everyone, though I know that's simply not possible. Sometimes the universe has to throw you a rain cloud, or in my case, a tornado that almost destroyed me. To put it out there nice and blunt, I struggled with thoughts and almost attempted suicide. I mean, wow, shocking for a video designed around the topic, right? But in all seriousness, seeing that in writing was never something I honestly thought would happen to me. I never once thought that something such as that would be something I would ever consider, and yet I almost did. It was the fall of 2019. I was anticipating a good school year and everything seemed to be fine. I had many friends and activities outside of class that I was a part of. What more could I ask for? Something was in the water though, as whatever anticipation I had for the year turned sour as the months came and went. Classes were more difficult than I expected, and the people I thought I knew as friends began feeling like the opposite, as a constant onslaught of micro-insults began to pile up. Life just simply slipped out of my hands as I fell into a very deep depression. I became cold, jaded, and angry at the world. I thought to myself, why am I here? To be a punching bag for everyone? What was the point of my life if it was to endure this pain that came with the constant onslaught of needles the world would throw me every day? I had people to talk to, though the only problem was that they made their problem about themselves wherever I felt like I was coming around. It never felt like anyone would truly listen to the problems that I had with my life. So I ended up not saying anything, spending most nights alone in my room. It consumed me, the feeling of hopelessness alongside the agony that came with the loneliness. The only thing that felt like a band-aid in this scenario was the album Ballads One by Joji, and yet even still it was only a short dose of comfort in a time of so much uncertainty. And that darkness and negativity eventually had eaten enough of me to where I had a plan, right down to the time and date. I wanted to on December 15th, 2019 at 2:36 a.m. Nothing special. It just seemed right. I stood there in the kitchen, looking at the knives that night, and reached for the biggest one. I held it in my hand, its weight feeling good enough for a slow and painful exit. I didn't do it. As I stood there with the knife, something told me to put it back. I looked out to the window to my left. The kitchen door in my parents' house had a large window where I could see out of it. Next door housed some fairly nice Christmas lights, with a plastic light-up Santa that had seen better days sitting on the steps of their front porch. Something about how quiet the world felt that night made me stop and think. Whether it was divine intervention or something else entirely. Whatever I thought was the way to go ended up feeling like it was all wrong after a flood of thoughts came rushing through my head. It was then I decided to put the knife back in its place and I climbed back into bed, with the feeling of throwing up shooting through my stomach all throughout the rest of the night. To say this came as a surprise to my friends when I told them would be an understatement. I couldn't hold something like this in, or it would come spilling out of me at a later time. Lunch came and went, and by the next period, I was in the counselor's office. After that day, I was put on Zoloft the first chance that came as soon as I saw the doctor. The road to recovery wasn't easy for me, especially since COVID just hit around this time. After lockdown came into effect, I was forced to recover in the same place where I almost ended my life. Throughout the whole lockdown process, however, there were these two things that would help me through this tough road ahead of me. These two things being Super Mario Galaxy and a silent voice. Sure, they may not be the most culturally impactful things to exist, but these were some of the most healing pieces of media I could have consumed at this time this all happened. Mario Galaxy, just like the rest of the series, was that blanket and warm hug I needed to keep going through the day. For a while during lockdown, this game kept me entertained and engaged, with my first 100% run being completed around this time of social isolation. Every single star I missed when I was little was collected, including the ones you get as Luigi. I played the absolute hell out of that game, enjoying every second of it. That one playthrough during COVID honestly is what cemented Super Mario Galaxy as my favorite game of all time, because I was older than when I first played it, and it meant more to me and still does today. I still play this game whenever I get the chance, because not only is it my favorite game ever, but honestly I think it was the game that saved my mental health. Like I've stated before, I don't think I could see myself not having a smile on my face while playing a Mario game, and this was one of the biggest smiles I had in years. When I began to read the chapters of Rosalina's storybook again, it felt like unlocking something I'd never felt before. A feeling that I could relate to, but couldn't put a word to it. It just clicked for me what this game was really about. Sure, Mario was the main focus, but Rosalina's story and everything surrounding Mario's adventure is what the game was really about in the end. Family, whether blood-related or found, is one of the things that evil cannot take away from you. even if you're on the other side of the universe. Similarly, I began watching a few movies that I had been meaning to watch either for the first time or to watch again for pleasure. My family had recently gotten rid of cable, and we needed some entertainment to distract ourselves from the world. There were some shows that we would watch together and others we would all watch separately. One example being Netflix's Drive to Survive, which sparked my interest in Formula One. But that's a story for another day though. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I was scrolling through the millions of things that Netflix wanted me to watch, but couldn't care about. Then, out of the corner of my eyes, I saw it. All 2 hours and 9 minutes of it. A Silent Voice on Netflix. My sleep schedule was non-existent at the time, so I figured I'd give it a watch, thinking it would just be another rewatch of a solid movie. No big deal. I couldn't be further from the truth when I say this. That movie saved me from ever thinking about killing myself ever again. It was the light at the end of the tunnel I had been looking for, and I couldn't be more grateful for the universe telling me to watch it then and there. Sure, I was a bawling mess after I was done, but that was it. That was the one thing I needed to know that I would make it out of this funk. I related to these characters. I knew about the gravity of their situations and what they were like because I lived through those same scenarios. There are a few scenes in particular that I'm referring to when I say this, so I want to dive deeper into those. After spending the summer vacation with the Nishimiyas, the fireworks display is held at night, and all seems to be going well. However, Nishimiya suddenly gets up and tells Ishida that she needs to study for what can only be assumed to be school-related. Ishida, being none the wiser, lets Nishimiya go back to her apartment. Yuzuru and Nishimiya's mother are a little confused as to why she would go study this late, but immediately following that question, Yuzuru asks Ishida if he could go grab her camera for her. Ishida agrees to find the camera as he finds it almost instantly by the mudroom in the apartment. After grabbing it, he notices how he can see the fireworks from here, with Nishimiya looking at them from the balcony. Something is up though, as Ishida notices something that sends a shiver down his spine. As he notices Nishimiya on the balcony, she begins to climb onto it, as Ishida begins to take off his shoes. As Nishimiya stands on top of the balcony, Ishida only then realizes what she's planning on doing. He struggles to make it to the balcony, hitting his side onto a chair and knocks over the kitchen table. Desperate to hear his cry, Ishida calls out to her, using her first name Shoko, as opposed to how he normally addresses her with her last name. Time freezes as Ishida just barely grabs onto her arm. He prays to God, telling whoever would listen to him that he would do all the things he couldn't up to that point. Looking people in the eye, listening to their voices, and promising to just do the right thing. As he begins to think about how badly he messed up, Nishimiya reaches for his other arm, and he begins to pull her up. Ishida pulls Nishimiya to stable ground when he suddenly finds himself hurtling toward the river below the balcony. Nishimiya doesn't even have any time to react and can only watch as he hits the bottom of the river with a painful amount of force. Memories flash before Ishida, muffled and disorientated. As the camera shows how hard he hit the water, he then thinks about how cold it is, and then how warm it has become. Lights that barely resemble an ambulance flash and fill the shot as it jump cuts to the hospital soon after. This scene broke me, though I'm sure it's not too hard to predict, as it's one of the most talked about scenes in the entire film, and I can understand why. It's pure shock and speechlessness all wrapped into something that only lasts about 10 minutes, which completely changes the tone of the rest of the film from that point on. What once was about fixing a bond is now a waiting game to see if Ishida lives or not. Throughout his absence on screen, the movie takes time to give all of the other characters some more time to show how they're taking the news. It seemed to shake everyone up a bit. Even Nishimiya's mother, who apologized profusely to Ishida's mother while she and Yuzuru waited to see him in the hospital. The other scene I wanted to talk about happens in one of the movie's most important scenes, where Ishida comes to Nishimiya in the form of text in a dream. He admits that he also wanted to die, and that he hoped to see her around. Gasping awake, Nishimiya instinctively ran toward the bridge where she and Ishida threw bread into the river below. As her cries echo through the water, they miraculously reach Ishida, who jolts awake from his coma. After stumbling his way to the bridge, Nishimiya cannot believe the sight before her as the two lock eyes. Nishimiya pokes him at his chest, surprised he isn't a ghost and there in the flesh. Ishida laughs as he slouches down to his knees, and Nishimiya kneels on the ground shortly after him, with tears unable to be stopped from falling from her eyes. It's there where they have some of the most vulnerable interactions up until this point. Ishida, swallowing everything that has built up to this moment, finally apologizes for the way he treated Nishimiya in the past, as well as everything that has happened more recently. He wanted to talk to her more often, though Ishida instead felt like the ways his feelings came across all those years ago were what put her in this corner, forcing her to think of the worst possible choice. Nishimiya interrupts him to tell Ishida that she believes that he's wrong. Nishimiya, barely able to control her tears, tells him everything would be better if she just went away instead of making everything worse for everyone by being around and not being able to change. A more concerned Ishida lets Nishimiya know that he's not too different from her way of thinking, but ultimately realizes that death is never the answer. He leans in closer to tell her that he wants to apologize not just to her, but to everyone, and with her help, become friends and live for each other. As he leans in, Ishida uses sign language with Nishimiya's hand to form the word friends, something Nishimiya had been asking from Ishida this whole time. Realizing this, Ishida backs away flustered as Nishimiya chuckles through her tears and signs the word for promise. What I think helped me understand these scenes, and perhaps explains why these scenes stick out in my mind, is that I can relate to both Ishida and Nishimiya's points of view. Within the bridge scene, for example, Nishimiya breaks down and tells Ishida all the things that she's held hostage, giving the audience a rare instance of what Nishimiya's true thoughts are. She hates herself, whether it's for not being like everyone else or for not being able to change. This self-hatred is what led her down the path of believing that going through with ending her life would solve everyone's problems. This expression is also something that I remember struggling with. I recall those empty nights where I was unable to sleep, thinking about all the ways life could have been different and how it would have been better if I weren't around. Being bullied also helped me understand another aspect of both characters that I relate to. The circumstances might have been different, but the feelings are the same. Feeling like I wasn't worth talking to or even acknowledging was something that I had expressed and felt throughout my days in school, and never really felt like I could move on from it. It was always something so personal, and it held onto me like a ball chain, cornering me at every chance. These feelings of isolation and rejection are among the most hurtful experiences in the human mind, with Ishida and Nishimiya's case being no different from anyone else's. The same can be said for Ishida's lowest points in life, as a part of me also understands and sees the different ways he expresses his feelings to my own. The anxiety that comes from being alone caused him to feel worthless in his life. The motivation to apologize to Nishimiya before ending his life was the only thing he saw worth as time. Only then did he know he could be contemptuous of ending his life. The audience sees this at the very beginning of the movie as he empties his savings, quits his job, and sells his stuff. Also, he could return a notebook and die by his own accord. Everything else just simply felt worthless in comparison. Even the vision he has of killing himself by jumping off the bridge is quickly shoved to the wayside as it isn't as important as apologizing. It's only after he reconnects with Nishimiya and promises his mother that he won't kill himself is when he realizes that it never really was the answer after all. It was only after I realized all the things that would change as a result is when I realized that ending my life was never going to be the answer, no matter how bad I thought it would get. Seeing Ishida struggle with the same feelings I once struggled with myself made me feel seen in a medium that I love. Seeing him struggle and succeed throughout the movie made everything that I had been through feel validated and real, and made much more sense to me once I knew the reason why the ending hit me so emotionally. After Ishida had apologized to everyone, they all headed out to see the different parts of the school festival as per Ishida's request. He still keeps looking around at everyone's feet and falls behind the group, unable to get rid of the X's that paint people's faces. Distant conversations fade in and out. All of a sudden, after Ishida looks up, the X's begin to peel off as the main theme of the movie swells in this gorgeous reprise arrangement. Looking around, Ishida can now clearly see everyone's faces and take in the sights. As confetti slowly falls to the ground, so do tears. Not from Nishimiya, but from Ishida. Uncontrollable tears, as the camera pans to different groups of characters throughout the movie. The movie then hard cuts to a small light as small animations of the main cast all play out. Each cut to the light gets bigger after each character until Nishimiya. After her animation, the light stops and the audience can just barely make out two characters in the middle of the light as it shines brightly. It whites out as the movie pans back to the sky and fades to black, with the movie fading out as well. Everything about the scene is simply perfect. The pacing, the camera work, the score, and the direction all cultivates into one of the best endings to any movie I've ever watched. It's not just a realization, but it's rather a rebirth for Ishida. Throughout the entire movie since childhood, he's only ever been comfortable with looking down and ignoring people out of fear and rejection. Now, after making everything right with his life, he finally understands what it means to look up and see the world for what it is. Overwhelmed, he cries for the first time as he realizes what it means to love yourself as well as to forgive yourself. It's such a powerful and nuanced realization that honestly took me a while to truly know what that felt like. When I did learn to love myself after years of putting myself down, this scene hit me like a f***ing train, and I don't think I will ever be able to capture that feeling while watching any other movie. The universe works in mysterious ways, but I believe that split-second decision to watch A Silent Voice was what the universe knew I needed during my time of healing. Life won't ever be the same for anyone who has struggled or suffered from thoughts of suicide, or anyone who has lost someone from suicide. Depression can really kick you in the butt and make you feel like every day is a hot sack of garbage. Loving yourself when you don't know where to start can feel intimidating and honestly pretty weird if you're not used to it. But if you know anyone who suffers from any of these, or you have suffered from similar issues to me, you don't need me to tell you that. These issues affect more and more people every day, and it doesn't show any signs of stopping. As we evolve in our world, so do our emotions, and I'd say they've gotten pretty complex. However, that doesn't mean you should have to suffer alone. No matter how much you think it's never going to help you get better unless you make the change you want to see in your life. My life, ever since that cold December night, has had many changes since then. I'm now in the best mental health I could be in, and I'm surrounded by people that mean the world to me. No matter what, I don't think I could ever go back to that hole I dug for myself. Instead, I planted a mental seed that has since grown into a beautiful forest with the help of friends and family that I wouldn't trade for anything in this life. I have loved being myself more than I have in the last half decade, and that's only made the things that happen around me all the better. Now, I'm not saying these two pieces of media that I've very extensively talked about have saved me from death, no. Rather, I would say that they've helped in pushing me in the right direction to better myself as a person as I enter adulthood during this time. With Mario Galaxy, I was able to heal through its captivating gameplay and story, learning that family is something you can't take away from each other. With A Silent Voice, I was able to see what it means to recover from self-hatred and what it means to forgive and love yourself. These sentiments are some of the most important to me, and I will always have them within reach to enjoy time and time again. Wherever I end up going in life, I know that I will always have people to turn to who care and love for me. And it's all thanks to two stories I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Thank you for watching.